Get educated. Get educated through MAO. MAO improves the health of South Alabama through education and information referrals. Our customized prevention education programs in schools, incarceration facilities, and other social settings help to reduce infection by empowering everyday people to know their risks as well as how to lower them. MAO is also an approved continuing education provider, offering web-based and in-person training sessions that help build human capacity while also earning contact hours required for licensure.
Good evening, and thank you everyone for being here tonight. We are so honored to have you here for this important conversation related to HIV, stigma, mental health, and religion. And it's so important that we look at these issues in this month as we talk about Black HIV awareness. So again, thank you for tuning in with us. So tonight, we're going to start, we're going to dig right in, but we want to introduce our panelists who are with us tonight. We're going to start here with Dr. Holmes, Dr. Scott Holmes. I believe in everybody giving voice to who they are. So they're going to tell you who they are, so a little bit about what they do, and hopefully just a snippet of what you're going to bring to this evening. So, kick us off, Dr. Holmes.
Well, good evening, everyone. I am, again, Dr. Scott Holmes. I am a licensed professional counselor, licensed in Alabama, as well as a clinical psychologist. I hold a licensure in that, as well as in substance abuse and addictions counseling. I am the clinical director of behavioral health treatment for the Alabama Department of Youth Services. So I'm over juvenile mental health for our state, as well as I am a former clinical psychologist with the Alabama Department of Corrections. So I have a lot of experience in working in mental health in the forensic arena. So I am happy to be here today. And also an ordained minister myself in here in Montgomery, and just happy to be here and happy to be able to contribute to this panel.
Thank you.
Greetings all, my name is Richard Williams. I'm grateful to serve as the lead pastor of Metropolitan United Methodist Church, where we are the beacon of hope on Rosa Parks that now shines a light on Gaston Avenue. We also have a significant level of outreach to the community, and so we're so grateful for MAO, which is one of our partners in the lives of our church, as we serve in the community and we do the work that we feel that we're called to.
Good evening, everyone. I am Michelle Summers. I am extremely humbled to be a part of this panel. I don't consider myself to be any sort of expert, but what I do know is from personal experiences as far as my own life and experiencing HIV and AIDS, and then having a platform to get out the word that we need to have more of these open discussions. This is truly a blessing for me to be on this panel. My pastor in our church is definitely in the fight to bring community awareness to so many topics, but this one specifically, unfortunately, after all these years, we're still in this. So very grateful to MAO and my esteemed fellow panelists. I am so humbled and grateful, and pray I can learn something to this
Well, we call you an ally. So
Yes.
that's very important. So we always need allies for.
Well, thank you. Yes, ma'am.
And I'm Dr. Marguerite Barber Owens. I'm Assistant Medical Director at MAO. I've been there 8 years, and I was in private practice for almost 25 years on Gaston Avenue, and where he now has his outreach with the church. And I just feel like I'm a little country doctor sitting here with these great people, so I'm just gonna do what I can do and put in where I can put it.
Okay.
So modest.
I'm gonna do my best.
Yeah.
Contribute.
Yes, you know, you're so much more than that, and you have done so much for this community. And just black folks in general in the community, so we really appreciate that. Just want to give a couple of housekeeping things. You know, we are live, and we will be answering questions live. But we want to start off with just a little bit of conversation about why we're here and the topic that we're on. So y'all ready to get started?
Yes.
Okay. So we are here having this conversation for many reasons. But tonight we want to focus on having an honest conversation about increased HIV rates in the South among people of color, HIV stigma, mental health and religion in the Deep South. We understand that there is heavy oppression economically, mentally, physically in the South, and we know a lot here in Alabama. We have a lot of these issues, especially as it relates to people with lived experience of HIV, being a woman, being a Black woman, being gay, transgender, non-gender conforming. So, and people within these groups often turn to their families, communities, and religious institutions for support that are often rejected. But at the same time, we tell our sisters and brothers that our homes and doors are always open. So, I want to ask each of the panelists to just think a moment about how do you think we're doing as family, community, and religious institutions with people living with HIV, with mental health, and just living with HIV and mental health. Let's start here.
Want to start? Well, I guess I will start with mental health. Let me just say this, the reason why I went into this field, and I think we discussed this a little earlier tonight, and I often tell my students I went into this because of my own dysfunctions. And not only that, but, you know, because of my own family dysfunctions. And as a result of it, you know, sometimes our calling is what we do. And of course, I want to fix my family. I haven't quite done that yet. But the bottom line is that I've always had a passion for people, or shall I say, a passion for the underdog, the one that no one wanted to talk with. And I said, I knew this as a child because I was always the one that tended to go to that child in the corner that actually just needed somebody to talk to. But I think in the African American community, mental health is very taboo to us. We have been taught in the church to keep it to ourselves and to not talk because it causes us to appear to be weak. And I just believe that what causes you to grow and causes you to be strong is to be able to face your darkness. And I am a firm believer in that. I'm a firm believer in that you cannot conquer what you refuse to confront, and you cannot confront what you refuse to conquer. So if we're more than conquerors, as the Bible says that we are, then if that is the case, then why can't we confront this head on and all of the issues? And, you know, the last thing I want to say before I go on, because I can talk about mental health all day long. Of course, that's what I do. But the thing is that I often see that we are just this community of secrets or a family of secrets. You know, we just don't want to talk about that. You know, not even, you know, and we may not talk about it at the dinner table, but at some point in time, we've got to deal with this. And if you don't deal with it, eventually it's going to fester. And that's just like even with HIV, if it's not treated, eventually it's going to turn into something else and it's going to turn fatal. So that's the elephant in the room that we refuse to deal with, and we refuse to deal with the issues of our society. we appear to just think that, and I'm a Pentecostal, so if you just think that we can just run around the church about 10 times and we're gonna be okay. And that's okay, but the bottom line is that when you get back home, that problem is still there. So how am I gonna deal with that? And what are we gonna do with that?
I would say for myself, looking at particularly the church experience, I feel that we've kind of shifted into more of a microwave experience where we just want to press a number and expect it to be done. But I prayed for a long time for a six-pack and I still haven't gotten one. And what we know is in the scripture space, it tells us prayer without works is dead. And so what I believe is that we've gotten to a space where we're not willing to do the work. And one of those little barriers that I would love to just bring forward is pride. I think we have pride within families. We have pride within family names. We have pride with stereotypes and stigmas that exist. And because of that, we're not having the real dialogue, which I don't believe that models faith. I don't believe that you can have faith if you're not really willing to unpeel the layers and really willing to deal with who the person is. Because how can I see you? How can I see that God created you? And how can you be in the example that God created if I don't know you? And if I'm not willing to hear you, and if I'm not willing to listen. And so I believe in the church, we've started going through these programs. We're just going through these programs. We're going through these motions, and we're trying to pack people in pews, and we're trying to fill and get as many amens as possible, but we're really not willing to do the work with the whole person. And so I believe we're going to do that. We're going to have to really wrap ourselves around tough topics. And when I think about, Jesus going to the cross, that was tough work. And so how dare us say that we want to be followers of the way or want to use language like Yahweh and we want to follow away without doing the labor.
Well, I think that from mental health, the church, and I'm sure Doc is going to talk about the holistic aspect of it. I think part of the problem are the social constructs, and those are not things that are easy to break. And so we're looking at mental health, and then we're looking at the church, and we're looking at all of these things, but at the end of the day, there are some social things that African Americans specifically have to begin to address that are historically intertwined with this conversation, even the stigma that is still a gay man's disease. These are things that have been set up long before AIDS and HIV was even a conversation. So I think until we as a people and as a community want to really address the elephants in the room, and there are several, conversations like these are needed. It will definitely spark dialogue. It will definitely bring about conversation. But at the end of the day, until we as a people are ready to come together and deal with what was done to us, deal with the mental abuse, the mental trauma, the domestic terrorism, how all of these things have led us to a place where we don't talk, where we isolate ourselves. We don't want to bear our pain, because anything that has to do with a lack of health and wellness is based in fear. It's based in fear of how others, we are a people that have become so accustomed to the definition that others put on us. We as a people we still haven't come to a consensus of, are we African American, are we Black? We are living in a country that has dogged us for so long, and now you're throwing all these other things, and HIV and AIDS, Doc and I were talking, this is 1984. I was a young woman, a young little girl when this came out. We're in 2022 and we are still running around treating people as if they are a scourge to society because of an issue that we even question the origins of. So until we begin to address the social constructs, until we begin to deal with ourselves, and there is nothing wrong with Black people trying to make Black people better. Black people trying to come together and turn this on a path where not only, and let's be clear, a people that does not know their history have no idea where they're going. So we're dealing with a fight about teaching our history in school, but we have to also teach our children not about HIV and AIDS. We now get into a place we need to just teach them about sex and sex education. So this is phenomenal to have, but at the end of the day, if we're really not going to, in our individual homes, and I love these individuals, but the church, that used to be the place where all things could be laid out. So like he said, and Scott, there was a time you put a young woman up in front of the church if she had a baby out of wedlock, or you would silence someone in the church. but we're wondering why we have this stigma. We have to stop playing patty cake and pretending like, oh, this is no. We got some heavy issues to deal with, and then this will not be an issue.
I think it's important to also mention that I think in the Black community and also in the church that we don't name things. Like we'll say, oh, something is wrong with Uncle such and such, or we don't name when somebody dies of complications of HIV or AIDS, we don't name it was cancer. You know, so we're always, you know, we're not naming things as they happen in our community.
Well, I'm going to come when it's my opportunity to speak again as a child with my background and my family background, and Dr. Holmes knows very well. I agree with you to a certain extent because I lived through it as a child. I lived through it as an adult because of the lifestyle my uncle had and the lifestyle my father had. So it wasn't about that they didn't want to give a name to it. It was about the fact that not only am I gay, but if my job finds out, I could lose. Not only if my church finds out, they're gonna sit me down from my position. If my family finds out, they're gonna ostracize. As a little girl in the 8th grade, I knew very well why some of my friends were dying. I knew it wasn't kidney failure. I knew it wasn't cancer. I was looking on the news. I knew this was AIDS. When I went to San Francisco 4 times a year to visit my uncle, whose companion of 20 years was dying of AIDS and he didn't have it, I went through the airport to see families shipping their folks off, people sitting by themselves, just wanting someone to come and sit with them. I don't think in people that live with it have a problem naming it. I think they have a problem of people saying, oh, we care about you and we love you only as far as our understanding and comfortability goes.
Looking forward to hearing more about that.
So to answer your question, I think we have come a long way in some ways. So if you look at how the treatment of HIV, and that's from the medical point of view, has come amazing ways in 40 years, from a medicine that you took every 4 hours that made you sick and you couldn't stay out the bathroom and they had the wrong doses and all those kinds of things, to a medicine now that you can take a shot once a month and go on about your business. So it has come a long way from that point of view. But as far as education, even in the medical community, there are still so much of all of that going on, that the education for starting again with the physicians and the people taking care of them. I think that part about naming the disease, I'm not sure. I got plenty of folks who say one of the reasons they go off their medicine is because I don't want to claim it. I don't want to say it. I don't want to be reminded today that I have HIV. And so 2 months later, they come back to me. So I think there is a kind of mental thing about naming something. But to answer your question, in some areas we have come a long way, but we sure got a long way to go. And next time, put me first. Don't put me after.
I wanted to piggyback on what Dr. saying. You know, a lot of times with, you know, and this is ironic today. I have in my private practice, I do have a patient who happens to be HIV, and she later told me that later on in our session, I knew something was wrong. Okay, I knew that, you know, and of course, probing and kind of ruled in and ruled out to see exactly what was going on, but it was just the sense of embarrassment because she's in the church, she's this, she's that, and so as a result of it, I had to reframe that for her. Instead of focusing on what you do have, let's focus on life. Okay, and that's very important to do that. Not that we are disassociating from the disease, okay? And we know what we have, but that's just like even with cancer, you know, they tell cancer patients, if it's your desire to live, then you're gonna do whatever you need to do in order to be able to become healed and to fight this disease, because it is a fight.
Yeah.
Okay, so again, kind of going back to taking personal responsibility holistically, okay, mind, body, and spirit, okay? I don't have a problem with us not focusing on HIV every time we have a counseling session. But what we want to do is focus on life, because of the fact that because you were diagnosed with it, as a result of it, this is where all of the dysfunctions are coming from. So what we need to do is divorce the narrative. Okay, and it's very important that we do that, because if we don't, you're going to continue with this narrative. And I often say we don't live lives, we live patterns.
Yeah.
Okay, And when we live these patterns, sometimes these patterns are dysfunctional, okay? And when we become, and then after that, we become dysfunctional and we make everybody else, okay?
That's true.
Bring everybody else into our dysfunction because of that. We make everybody else pay for what someone else has done to us.
That's a tweetable statement.
Yeah.
You know, they must be.
No, I'm
Oh,
not.
that's a tweetable
Yeah.
statement. Sticking with you, Dr. Holmes, I want to talk a little bit about trauma-informed care. In trauma-informed care for our audience refers to the principles that guide and direct how we view the impact of severe harm on a person's mental, physical, and emotional health. Trauma-informed care encourages support of treatment of the whole person rather than focusing on only treating the individual symptoms or specific behavior. Trauma-informed care is also recognizing that the lived experiences of both the client and the provider are present and sharing the same space at a moment of time, so does both of their trauma. You mentioned earlier, you know, sometimes we go into these health professions to kind of help ourselves.
Exactly.
We also know that people respond to trauma through behaviors, and sometimes those responses or behaviors can be seen as extreme or counter to societal norms. So what do trauma responses look like in your area of work? And how can we honor trauma responses without labeling behavior of the person being bad or negative?
Okay. Anyone that has been traumatized, they don't want to talk about it. I mean, nobody wants to face that. And that's understandable because nobody wants to go back and revisit that pain. And I'm very careful about that, even being trained in trauma, because I don't want to reintroduce you to something that has caused you that level of dysfunction. But the other piece to that is we have something what we call dissociative personality disorder, or disassociation period. A lot of times what has happened is that I totally disassociated from that pain, okay? To me, it doesn't exist, yet I'm symptomatic, okay? I'm depressed, I'm angry, I'm snapping at everybody, okay? If you look at me wrong, so I may turn this mother out, you know what I'm saying? And that's just how it is, and I'm just being very, real about that. And so as a result of it, helping them understand where this is coming from and gently, and being a preacher, like a shepherd, gently lead them, okay, to that place in order to be able to assist them in the healing process. And I said process because it's not overnight. It doesn't happen overnight. We have something in counseling what we call object relations therapy theory, where if I look at you, you may remind me of that person. Okay. I just had this experience with a friend of mine. It was something that I did just out of the blue. I had no idea, but I had no idea that they had been traumatized by something. And as a result of it, they had to bring it to my attention. Can you not say that because this is what happened to me? I said, I'm so sorry that happened to you. I had no idea that it happened. So where can we go from here? So again, with trauma-informed care is, and most agencies now, especially in the correctional setting, we are talking about that. Our kids that we deal with on a day-to-day basis with the juvenile facilities, you would be surprised at what these kids have had to go through. Many of them are what I call the parentified child. They weren't able to have a childhood, so that's traumatized them because they've been that person that they've had to raise their brothers and sisters, raise their siblings. And as a result of it, they never had that. So they had to go out and do something. I didn't want to see my mama crying no more because this man was coming in there beating on her. So what did I do? I went outside and I robbed. I did this, and as a result of it, here I am. Okay. But I will say this, in sessions, it's important to make them feel safe and let them know that it's okay to talk about that. And sometimes we have to do it nugget by nugget. I often say, how do you eat an elephant? A piece by piece. No offense to deltas. That's it. Yeah. Okay. Right. All right. But the bottom line is that piece by piece, that's what.
Thank you. And I think you said something important when you mentioned that your friend was offended or traumatized by something. said, you acknowledged it, you didn't dig in.
No.
And I think that that's very important. You didn't dig in, you acknowledged it, and then you tried to rebuild the relationship.
Exactly. I did not want to re-traumatize them to that. I just acknowledged it. I apologized, okay? Instead of just saying, well, I'm sorry that that makes you feel that way. And I will make sure that I'm very mindful of that, and even going back to scripture, the Bible says that if eating meat offends my brother, I don't do that. So, in loving kindness has he drawn us. So that's what I would love to do, to make sure that I find peace with him, okay, and not re-traumatize him. However, what I did do, I did recommend, because I can't be his therapist, okay? I did recommend that at some point in time when you're ready, that may be something that you may need to look at. I encourage you.
I think, a little, that's important too. Friendships are friendships, but professional work needs to go to a professional.
Exactly.
So, and I appreciate that you did that as well. Because I think oftentimes, especially in healthy professions, we kind of blur the lines, where people blur the lines with us.
Right.
But we are like, just need a little bit more support.
Exactly.
Okay, Dr. Owens. We know that there's a lot of stigma related to HIV and mental health, especially in the Black community. How does stigma related to HIV and mental health complicate your work? And I say that because, having done this work for a long time, oftentimes getting someone to take medication, the HIV medication, they have to be ready mentally to be able to do it. And if they're not going to be successful on the medication, and it can be harmful. So how does it complicate your work, and how do you get someone from getting ready, how do you get them ready to take the medications and to just really understand what they have to live?
It makes it very complicated. So that's the short answer. The longer answer is when they first come in, one of our wonderful behavioral health counselors here, we automatically, everybody who comes in has to be assessed. And so there's that nice little written assessment that we do. But there's also some assessment that I'm going to look at you, and I'm going to notice how you are, and I'm going to get some history. So what you may not know is depression. I'm going to look for those things that you lost weight, or you're angry all the time, or whatever may be the sign that you're telling. So part of it is first getting to know the person that we're talking to. So they need to be able to trust me as I talk to them about the medicine. They need to have, if I think they need to have counseling, I'll call Betsy on the heartbeat in a minute, but even if I don't, she's going to see the person when they first come in that first few hours. It does make it very complicated, not only to start the medicine, but to stay on the medicine. And not only that, just depression itself will affect your immune system, so how you respond to the medicine. All of those makes it very complicated. And as Michelle said, there's all that other stuff that comes, that other baggage that comes with it, the other social issues that they have to deal with. So, do they have some place to live? Yeah, you want medicine delivered, but where they're going to deliver it to? There's all kinds of other stuff, and that makes it very, very complicated. And that's why I do believe it takes a whole team. It's not anything that one person or even the first time will get. They may not be ready on that first time. So come on back. We'll see you back then. We'll discuss it. And part of it is finding out where they are. What are you thinking? Tell me what your fears are. What have you heard? Because some of that may be able to be this education part.
I was thinking about, when I think about HIV medication and just the process on getting someone on medication, early on in the 90s, it was life-sustaining, medication. But oftentimes we knew that Black folks weren't ready, they didn't trust it, all these different things. So I think about now in HIV care and medications, do we need to look at how we approach Black folks culturally as it relates to taking the medications, because you said something, or just the approach of HIV care. Because you said something about building the relationship and talking with them and getting ready to know. I know being doing the HIV work in the 90s, it was like, let's do this assessment. And when you're doing sexual behavior health, I'm having to ask them hard questions. I'm having to, ask questions on the first visit.
Right.
Can we lead up to something else? Can we start with something else and lead up to that later? And I mentioned this because I had a student was saying that she was watching a video or a movie or something online. It was based in like Africa, and somebody came to this detective agency and they needed help, but instead of getting to the work, they had tea first and they had coffee and they built a relationship and then they got down to business. Is that something that we could do culturally? Can we have tea and coffee first before we
have tea and coffee first? Put that on the agenda. Okay, we're in reality here now. And I think that is a very nice thing, but I don't think we have in the reality of having to see patients and pay bills, that we can't do that. But there are things that are the equivalent of tea drinking. Because I'm gonna ask you about your mom. Because I'm gonna ask you, I'm gonna find out what we have in common. Where did you go to college? Or where did you go to high school? Or where are you from? Or those kinds of things that are my equivalent of tea drinking in the economic situation that we have now, because I need a job and I need them to be able to pay me.
I know billing is a big thing.
Right.
Billing and and I understand that, but I understand that's a very Western way of doing things too.
Yeah, and you know what? And it's actually the buy-in that what we're trying to do with once a person has been diagnosed with HIV. I'm going to give you a model that we use at Top Other Prison Women. I stayed there for 10 years as the only male psychologist at a female prison, and it was very interesting. And but the bottom line is that we had to go through training of gender responsive practice. So what we decided to do was we took a multidisciplinary approach because a lot of the women that were coming in there, women are relational. So as a result of it, many of them were coming in there because of volatile behavior. They may have something happen with their mate because of whatever it may have. They may have been raped. Somebody may have done something to the child. However, when you got there, because you never had help, they never got a pap smear. They never got any of that. And so them coming in, it took a multidisciplinary approach to let them know that they were HIV positive. Okay. So what we did was, it was myself, the psychologist, the medical doctor, the medical director, the nurse practitioner. We also included the chaplain. We also included a inmate that was a part of that. And we had to think outside the box, because if they see somebody that's going through the same thing that they're going through, okay, then what will happen is that they'll open up a little bit more. And so we were able to talk with them and introduce medication to them and help them understand that this is the plan, and it was a part of their service plan, it was a part of their treatment plan that we were doing. And so as a team, we would meet back with them. Okay, how are you doing? We had a check person. The inmate would go by and check on them. Are you okay? And so forth. And so it takes that type of approach to do that, because when you see that somebody's going through the same thing that you're going through, then it causes the journey to be a bit lighter. And so I think that's very important.
That's important. Okay, thank you. All right, Pastor Willie. It's no secret that there are many stigma-related issues in the church. As it relates to mental health in the church, people are often asked to just pray about it and God will work it out. Or the pastor can provide pastoral counseling, and oftentimes they're not qualified to provide that kind of counseling. Don't have the training experience for that kind. And that's why I'm thankful that you because I was like, you said clergy and yeah. There's also, because you can
Okay.
There's also the stigma about HIV and the behavior aspect of it, because most religious doctrine tells us that one of the ways that HIV is contracted is seen as a sin. Therefore, instead of focusing on having the terminal disease, the focus becomes on how they got it. And we don't do that when it comes to various forms of like cancer or other terminal diseases. Many of the religious doctrines can be seen as oppressive toward an already oppressed community. In your opinion, what conversations and unlearning need to happen in religious communities as it relates to HIV and mental health?
So the first thing I want to say is that I have a therapist, and I see a therapist regularly. And that when persons come before me where I am not equipped, I send them to someone or walk with them to someone who can service them. In the same way that if my house was on fire, I would not attempt to put the house out myself because I wouldn't, one, have enough water nor training enough to do the work to even save the house, let alone to keep myself alive. And I think what has happened inside the church is that we're living through a season where we're experiencing a host of malpractice. And some people call it spiritual malpractice, but it's just malpractice. We have individuals who are operating beyond themselves, and they're attempting to say that God has equipped them to work outside of those bounds. And I don't believe that gospel. I don't believe it's true. I believe it's a heresy, and it's really false. But what it's done is it's created a community that allows us to say that just because I can preach or string some words together, that I am now equipped to be a leader or to provide guidance or even to interpret doctrine. I've never seen this level of society that we've entered now, where my eye doctor, I expected they went to some type of eye school, like optometry or something. If I was to go to an ER, I wouldn't just expect the janitor to perform CPR on me. I mean, maybe they're trained, but I would want to see a doctor, someone in some scrubs to be able to handle my medical care. But for some reason, you hang a cross on the wall and you put on some clothes and you put a reverend, apostle, or comma, or anything else in front of your name, and you say you represent a Jesus, and all of a sudden you don't need anything else but that relationship alone. And I believe that that is just spiritual malpractice. And I think that as we live in our own community, what we're really experiencing is poor interpretation of doctrine. And that's the part what I would dare to say is that I don't know a doctrine that really is aligned through the biblical text that, particularly as African American, that says that we shall be oppressed. I don't know that doctrine, but what I do know is that there are a host of persons that are using Google searches to craft their sermons and messages, and they haven't studied. I don't know what they've studied, but they haven't studied. And so what has happened is they're leading in these spaces and they're not equipped for the work.
But that's been the history of a lot of the Black church. People have been called to preach, and people have been going to churches of people that have been called to preach and have not had any,
So what I would dare to say, I believe we're all called to many different things. And just because I'm called to it doesn't mean I don't need to be equipped to do it. And so what I think has happened is that many persons have heard a call, but they haven't really answered the phone. They hear it ringing. They're pretending that they've, heard the phone ringing. And to be honest, we've sat in their pews. We've participated in the system. I mean, we really have to take some mutual responsibility in this work, because the only way that you have spiritual malpractice is I've never seen someone do spiritual malpractice by themselves.
Right.
It takes an audience. And so when you like and share foolishness, you create more spiritual malpractice and more foolishness. And so that's we have a host of that. And then the other piece is particularly as African Americans, if we are to be connected to who we are, then where are those principles? Where's the principle that says that you are my neighbor and that I love you? And where's the principle that says that you were created and your creation was perfect, and then that mold was broken and you were a one of a kind? Like, where's that gospel message? That's the doctrine that I'm aware of, and the one that I was equipped to be able to serve in the midst. But I am aware that there are a host of individuals that don't believe that. And I think that this is where that if someone finds himself in a church experience or in a community that is doing them harm, get out. Don't go. Take your money with you. Take your talent with you. And don't enter in those spaces, because you're doing more harm, not to just yourself, but because of your presence, someone else may be joining to your left and right. And so it's not until we start moving in that level that we start really attacking some economics to spaces. If you say that you're about the community and you love the community, then your church should reflect that. And if your church does not love the community, and if they do not do the actions that you believe they should do, then that should not be your church. Just because it's popular, just because they have a t-shirt or the pastor wears a nice suit, does not mean that's where you should be. You may need to be in a different community, and that's okay as well.
And I think it's part of people recognizing that, too, you know, understanding that, the some of the harm that may be caused.
Well, I'm going to say this. I was fortunate, and I'm just going to say this. You know, my mom is an educator. She's a retired educator, and my mom is stern. And those of you that sit in the audience, you know who is, you know. And one of the things my mom has always taught me is that, son, whatever you do, you need to be prepared for. And as a former classroom teacher, you know, when I started teaching school, I know the first thing she said is, never allow your students to walk away saying that they didn't learn a thing. If they just learn how to just sit there quietly, at least they need to say that this teacher taught me how to do that. And it's always a blessing when and you know, Michelle knows this, that when they tag us, you know, on Facebook, the things that we used to tell them, you know, they say that. But I said all that to say this. I was also fortunate to have great pastors in my life who taught me the importance of going to seminary, the importance of knowing and being, shall I say, the Bible says, make your callings and your elections sure. And not only that, but being a good steward over whatever God has called you to. And also to understand that the Bible says to some he gave. Hallelujah. To some he gave. Not to all. And so if he gave you that gift, you know, and whatever your area of gifting is, you have to be a good steward over that. So a good steward means good study and knowing how to, if this is not what I can offer you, then I need to refer you, even in the medical field, okay? You know, I'm gonna refer you to a specialist, okay? It's the same thing, you know, and if we grab a hold to that model, okay, I think that in the Black church, we'll understand, and pastors across the board, I just say this all the time, nobody's trying to take your members. Nobody's trying to discourage them. They're not, you know, that's what I'm saying.
Is that a name?
You know, well, this is the fact that, you know, I think, and I'm gonna tell you this, and I was talking to my mom about it. She said that you have to understand that in the Black church, the only thing a Black man could have ever been is a pastor. Okay, because that was the only thing that he could be respected for, you know, in that particular culture. So therefore, he takes it, he runs with it, and he, you know, these are my memories. You know, and so as a result of it, you know, we tend to have this sense of ownership. But we have to, again, I'm going back to this, and if you don't leave with anything that I said today, divorce that narrative. You've got to divorce this narrative, because if you continue to operate within this, we're always going to continue with this pattern of dysfunction in our community. It's very important that we do that.
And I want to add one more piece. When we think about the unlearning piece, and I think you shared a piece there, I think it's very important to understand what we're seeing in the midst of living in Alabama. We're experiencing a society that says that they are Christ followers or they're Bible believing, but they only care about the birth of one and not the continuum of the human. I mean, literally, when we can build more prisons than we can, that was supposed to be money for COVID-19. And somehow prisons and COVID-19 has connected together. And then we build a private prison in a conservative, biblical, well, supposed to be biblical society. We have to understand what we're seeing in the midst of that.
Yeah, that's a very important point. Very important point. Thank you. Okay, Michelle, as an ally, the most complicated thing about my work is helping people living with HIV understand the power and helping them to work with issues of self-stigma. Helping them to process that what is said about them. Helping them not to agree with the stereotypes or internalize those things that are said about them, and that there is not an acceptable reason that they should be treated less than human. People who are experiencing stigma are essentially being told that they are abnormal or something is wrong with them, but in actuality, what is happening to them is not normal. We also have to consider that many people living with HIV have so many other stigmas facing them before they even get to their HIV status. So HIV is definitely a social justice issue, but it's not seen as one. It does not coexist well with the other social justice issues. How can we help people, particularly Black people, understand that HIV is worthy of being on the agenda with the other issues that we have to grapple?
First of all, you got to put yourself on the agenda. I've been sitting here listening to all of this, and we've gone from medicine to the church, and everybody has to look somewhere else for the responsibility of making them whole, the responsibility of their health, the responsibility of their salvation. That's foolishness to me. First of all, the child's first teacher is the mother. And Black women are some of the most amazing and powerful women in society, but we're the most marginalized. And we don't allow ourselves to give birth to children and allow them the freedom to be every powerful part of who they are. We look to the church to define us, our spiritual guidelines. We put too much responsibility in that sense on the church. We look to the schools to give our children some sense of self and education and this and that. You can't do that. Everything that we are trying to perfect or understand or whatever we're trying to do with HIV and AIDS, it starts in the house with individuals. These social constructs are too deeply rooted. When you talk about mental health, Black people don't like mental health, but everybody is running to see a mental health therapist. So clearly mental health is not the answer. We've been running to the church since the beginning of time, praying to a God that was essentially their understanding of God that was forced on us. So let's even get to the confusion of the Black church. So how are you going to address something as powerful as sexuality and illness and you still confused about who your God is? How are you going to, and the reason why I love this woman so much, people who are teachers, educators, and doctors, when I would go to Dr. Barber's office, I was an overweight young woman. All my life, doctors told me that everything that was wrong with me was because of my weight. I met this woman. I got none of that. She didn't give me teeth. She didn't do any of that, but what she gave me was a reflection of her own self-love. I don't care how many degrees you got and how much therapy. What Scott does realize, you can have every doctorate degree on your wall. If you don't have self-love, you are wasting that person's time because you are just like a pastor in the pulpit. You are counterfeit. Mm-hmm. So as I have been a teacher for 22 years, and that is no disrespect to anyone in this room, I have been on the front line. Children come to school, and not only have they left all of these precarious situations, but they come to school even in more precarious situations, because now I've dealt with all this at home. Now I'm coming to school to my classmates teasing me. I'm coming to school when teachers tease me and administrators, because half of those folk are still caught up in the trauma of their childhood. Where I work right now, Dr. Holmes is my superior, but I'm in the dorms with those boys. They leave worse than what they came in with. Simply because as a society, we teach and we preach self-love, but we don't really reflect it. We judge people based on our own personal understandings and trauma. Black folk love social media and what people call us on the phone and tell us. Why would I want to come out and tell somebody I have HIV and AIDS? Because the very people who pimp the word love are the very people that sit up and they ostracize. The Black church has had such a weight on its shoulder now. No disrespect, where is the Black church? The Black church is fragmenting due to this pandemic, because the one thing the Black church did is they made you have accountability. And we don't want to be accountable. And I'm not talking about accountability for your sexuality, because let's be clear, that is no one's business. We are too common with very uncommon things. When you talk about HIV and AIDS, the average person doesn't even know what that disease is. They don't even understand. They just heard HIV and AIDS. And let me go back to when the medicine, and my uncle had to grind up his husband because they were married. He had to grind up his medicine because he had lesions down his throat. He could not hold any food down, and he was living as a hermit because in San Francisco at the time, the gay capital, there was greater stigma than anywhere else in the nation. And so we're having this panel and we're asking ourselves as a community, how can we get people? You can't. Let's stop. You can't. The only thing that we can do is as individual people be a beacon of light, what Christ called us to be. Yes, you are. He called us to be a beacon of light. He called us to live our lives as an example. Get up every morning, and if you can help one person, there's no great fix. If there was a great fix, everything that Dr. King dreamed at the Washington Monument would have came to pass. There will never be a big fix. There is not an answer. We have to teach and show people individual love of self, accountability for our actions. It was a gay man's disease. Now Black women are some of the largest pockets that are infected with this disease. Why is that? Because number one, we don't deal with sex. We don't talk about sex in our household because it is still a taboo. And it's sometimes a taboo with the people that are the most sexually promiscuous people. And being gay does not mean you're sexually promiscuous. Having AIDS does not mean you were giving your body away and you were careless. Life happens. It happens. There are people right now, they woke up this morning without it, tonight they're going to get it. Not because of any negative thing that they did, but simply because life happens. I know people that run miles, they eat well, and they come down with cancer. Life happens. I know parents that have been the best parents, giving the best, taught the best, and their child still end up out there with us at DYS because all those children are not criminals. Some of them just didn't have enough money to get out the situation. And some people don't have enough money to hide the fact that they got HIV and AIDS. In the same communities where you are doing all these amazing things, Pastor, but guess what? Until individual Black people want to see better for the Black community, all of this is going to fall on the ground. It's not going to do anything. And I respect what everyone is saying, and everyone is telling the truth. But at the end of the day, we as a people must get back to whom the Son sets free is free indeed. And no matter what happens in your life, there is always a lifeline to help you. Do you know how to pray? I don't look to my pastor. He can tell you, I don't call him and ask him to pray for me. This is one of my closest friends. I never called and asked him for mental health therapy. I know this woman, if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't even have a child. She did her job, but she lived a life where she was a beacon of light. I've had doctors my whole life, but this one lived a life that no matter what she wrote on that paper, what prescription she gave me, when I walked out of her office, I felt like I mattered. I felt like somebody cared for me. That's what we have to get back to as an ally. I want to get back to true, authentic love. I don't have to be your friend to show you a level of filial love and respectful love. I can't give you agape love. And I'm not going to sit here and tell that lie that I haven't been in the presence of people talking about folks that have AIDS. When my dad and that community was going through and they were underground, my father was an executive for Lucent Technologies. People who brought him birthday presents and loved on him, but they couldn't know his true sexuality. But they bust churches open, they tithers, they give offerings. But they ain't equipped. So the answer to your question about there's nothing you can do, be a light. Be a light. Be a light to somebody that is in darkness. Be a light. You want to wonder how we can cure the stigma of HIV and AIDS? Be a light. Just be something good. Be what you say you are on Sunday, on Wednesday.
All right.
So what about the self-stigma part of
This working, how
The self-stigma comes from the community.
But I know, but you mentioned that you have to, that someone has to grapple with it themselves. How can we start helping support them?
like, now, let's meditate, let's do all these different things.
we say, hey, you need to deal with this, or come, just understand what's happening? How can we help them to just understand that they need to do the work?
You don't get to do that. That's not your job. That's none of our job. People are ready to receive.
Well, if they're ready when they're ready, right?
Well, let me.
Okay.
People are ready to be healed when they're ready to be healed. You can give all the meditate, and people in the church pray and ask God, go see your therapist, until somebody is ready to look at themselves in the mirror with all of their isms and schisms and be a light. There's nothing left for you to do, because the reality is some people gonna go to Dr. Holmes, they're not gonna jail with him. Some people gonna come to you, they're not gonna jail with you. They may not be able to understand your methods and your tactics, but the one method and tactic that you were born in is compassion.
I want to, and that's where I want to build upon, if you don't mind. You know, not too long ago, I was talking to somebody. I said, you know, we fill the altars, and we ask them if you've been the spirit of hurt, we want to cast out the spirit of hurt, and you know, we just want to oil you down and pray over you, and we just want to cast out the spirit of hurt. You know, we bind the spirit of hurt, we come against it in Jesus' name, and we spend hours and hours and hours at the altar casting out the spirit of hurt. Okay? However, the hurt was caused by them, by the church. Okay? And then the one probably that's trying to cast out the spirit of hurt, you probably the one that did the hurting. So a lot of times, instead of us sitting up here trying to bind the spirit of hurt and come against the spirit of hurt, the best way to do that is to apologize for it.
Come on.
Okay? And if we do that, then that level of compassion can open up, that portal of compassion can open up, and then we can start the conversation, you know, with that. I often say, and I'm looking at Michelle and you know, Dr. Ward and everybody else that's in here with, you know, when we were at Alabama State and I was the choir director, you know, over the gospel choir, and oh my God, and I didn't want to go here, but I felt God just leading me. You know, we lost a lot of choir members due to this, and we had no idea what was going on. But I believe that at that particular time, God was conditioning our hearts and conditioning our lives to, for this particular day, by divine appointment today, that we talk about this, because it was happening. They were just in the theater, they were dying, and next, you know, they're getting sick, they're falling out with seizures, they're having these things that we just had no idea what was going on. And so, because we had to posture ourselves in such a way that we had to take care of one another. One in particular, the church did not want him to be eulogized at their sanctuary. So we had to take him to a funeral home. And the mother called and asked, would I do that? And I put myself on the line. As this hardcore fire brimstone Pentecostal preacher, you damn you to hell because you did this, if you look wrong, if you drank red Kool-Aid, okay? You know, but the bottom line is that I remember that time I did that eulogy, and my mom told me, she said, your life is your eulogy. So I wanted to be remembered as one that showed compassion, and I'll never forget, I gave an altar call there, and I can remember all types of people that came in. They were transgender, they cross-dressed, whatever they wanted to call themselves. I did not even focus on that. I focused on their life. I focused on their healing. And I said, if you just repeat this prayer, this simple prayer, I didn't make it complicated. I said, now what I want to do is I want to pray that God will send you on this journey. I pray that God will send you on this journey towards healing. And some of those people I still see today. So it's important that we be that light, okay, to them. And we pull from our own internal locus of control, things that we have personally gone through, things that we have personally been through. And transparency is important. I know they teach us in therapy and counseling, they say, oh, don't do that because that's one of, you know, but what I do is that I'm very careful about it, but yet still I use it as a compass. I may not tell you everything that's going on with me, okay? But I could say, I won't say that I know where you're coming from, but I will say this. I can see how that has caused you to feel the way you're feeling. And I pull from that. And that takes, and you know, I said therapists out there, that takes skills for years in order to be able to do that. So it's important that we make that person feel comfortable enough to be able to talk with us and to be able to be open enough to talk about that particular situation, because that's where it starts. Love of yourself. And when you love yourself, you're talking about accountability. If you're sexually promiscuous, this is a conversation. If you love yourself, you don't do things to hurt yourself. Is this life working for you? Is being promiscuous working for you? What benefit is it bringing to you? Did I damn them to hell? No, I didn't. Okay. What I did was I put the problem in their hands and I caused them to be able to look at it and make a decision on their own to see what best fits them. And of course, it's not benefiting you to be like this because this is where we are today. But what can we do? So I'm your level of accountability. I'm going to call you. Well, how are you doing with that? What's going on with that? You know, it's the same thing with even with addiction. You know, same thing. It's 365 days out of the year that is recovery, 24 hours a day. When you walk into a 7-Eleven, what are you going to see? You're going to see the beer. You're going to see the alcohol. When you go into our Black communities, what are you going to see? A liquor store, okay? So it has to be a personal decision that I have to love myself enough to not be able to hurt myself.
I'll piggyback on that since Scott opened that door. When we were at Alabama State, I had two dear friends, and I don't mind saying their names because both of them, I never forget Chu. Chu could not stand me. And a lot of people don't. I'm from the Midwest, so I've always, Scott, they know, I've always been very bold,
I've always
very
been her therapist way before I
and
became a therapist.
He was, because I had a lot of doors closed because I didn't know the Southern way to address something as a Black woman. And Chu could not stand me, could not. And Chu came to see me in a production. I was the lead. And he came up and Chu had lost weight and he was visibly sick. And nobody wanted to deal with it. But because of the road that God allowed me to travel, and the reason why I came back is because Dr. Holmes said something. None of it will be wasted. We're such a society, we don't want to hurt. Everything's supposed to be perfect. We're supposed to live like this. Your trials make you stronger and they equip you for the journey ahead. And so Chu hugged on me. He said he apologized. I said, no apology, because forgiveness is powerful. Chu was about to die. And he said, I want to see Michelle's home. Nobody wanted to come with me. Nobody. I said, okay. I said, tell me what he wants to see. They said, you want to go? I said, yes, because I had been through this. I said, yes, I'm going to go. And I walked in that room. He was by himself. He couldn't have weighed more than 70 pounds. There was droplets of blood. He had nothing but white sheets, droplets of blood everywhere. They had to put the toilet at his bedside, and this had to be 96, 97. And we sat there, and I hugged him, and he kind of pushed back, and my dear friend Chris Tetway was with me. He went, and he stayed in the corner. And I just hugged you, and he said, "Girl, I can't say the last time I had you." And I said, well, my experiences let me know that you are not a threat to me. Let's talk. He said, well, God, I said you brought me something to eat. And what he had to eat was very soft stuff. And he loved those lemon pies. And I remember sitting there and I remember the conversation, and out of respect, I'm not going to relay it. But what stuck out to me, he was like, he said, child, everybody used to love me. He said, now I can't get nobody to come see me. Well, my other friend was sick, and I don't want to say his name because that is there, but I think Scott and I are talking about the same person. They put him off campus. He had nowhere to go. They put him off. I said, come stay with me. And our dear friend Chris Brown said, girl, you finna let this. I'm about to go home for Christmas. He stayed with me a couple of days. Nobody came by my apartment. I said, lay in my bed. He said, I'm not going to do that. He lied about what he was going to do because how people treated him. But in those last moments, all I knew, I don't know any medicine, I don't know anything, But the reason why I was so excited that I was asked on this panel because of my history, and I get what you're saying, and I don't want to come across as if I'm discounting what you all are saying, but to change the minds of people. If that was the case, everybody would have a Coke bottle, everybody would go to the gym, everybody would eat right, everybody. It's not realistic. What is realistic is that when we have these places and these spaces, to remember that one person impacting one person can change a generation. That's why my great pastor, our great pastor used to say, men build nations, but women build generations. Because women, we are the compass of compassion. We are the ones that will look at the child that has been called ugly, fat, you don't fit in or nothing. We are the one the child runs to. We are the one that the child embraces. And so many of us, because of how our society is set up, Black people are still dealing with the trauma of how we were treated in this country, how we are treated. They don't even want us to teach our history in school. But you want me to sit a young girl down that does not know that her history did not start in America, have a conversation with sex about her, talk about HIV and AIDS, and at the age of 15, she gonna understand that? I'm my age, I still don't understand stuff. But what is important at this point is for churches to shift and pastors to shift, because that is the great equalizer in our community. Everybody has been to church, go to church. This is the first generation that we're seeing that does not connect to God the way we do. This is the first generation that does not worship and praise the way we do. This is the first generation. We don't know much about this. What would I have been with this at 15? We are trying to put an understanding that started in the 50s, and we still have a curriculum we're teaching in our schools that is 300 years old. We are antiquated because we are afraid of the truth of who we are as individuals and the truth of who we are as a society. And so HIV and AIDS and the stigma is a byproduct of the hate, the disrespect, the ignorance that we have always had to deal with. So as a Black man my dad in 1990, and I'm already, my father told me, he said, when I go to work, he said, and I'm not trying to be offensive, he said, I look at these white boys with their khakis and their polos on. He said, I'm in a Brooks Brothers suit and a Versace tie with Ferragamo shoes, and that's the only way I can be, or they're not going to respect me. So you got a man dealing with this, and now you want these people to be open about their sexuality and deal with this. It ain't happening. And here we are 20 years later, and we're still saying, why do people feel like this? Because we are the elect. We are what W.E.B. Du Bois called the talented 10. And we try to discount all our great leaders and all our great philosophies. The answer, we've already had the answer. It is up to those individuals in this room, those people online, to make a decision that, for example, when I go to work on Thursday, this is another layer I'm going to add to it, to a bunch of young men that didn't even know or understand the concept of slavery. They just thought we was picking cotton and we was happy being it, until I showed them Unchained Memory. Until the teachers make a decision that that's your classroom. And you're the thermometer in there. And you determine the lesson for the day. Anybody that knows me, yes, I have a degree in English and a master's in it. And I teach more history than the law allows, and I have no problem with someone telling me I'm willing to take that hit. But we not. So we need to stop playing these games, because what it's going to take to turn this ship in the right direction going to take sacrifices people don't want to make. You don't want to sacrifice your home and your car. You don't want to sacrifice your organizations. You don't want people to look at you sideways that you drink and you chill out with. But our children are on fire, our community is on fire, and we sit and try to pontificate and philosophize on stuff that the answer is already there. We have got to make a decision as a community that the Black history we study, what they gonna study about us? Are they going to say that we walked in and picket lines? Are they going to say we protested? Are they going to say that you canvassed in the community, that you raised your voice? Are they going to say, baby, I made good money and I had fun drinking with my sorority, my fraternity, my people, like, child? We just the president of Delta Sigma Theta just died unexpectedly, and she is the one I was so enamored by her because she sisterhood, scholarship, service, and social action. How much social action going on? You got to fight for. You have a governor that took $500 million that our people needed, our schools needed. And she gonna be a prison. I ain't seen a picket sign yet. But we want to talk about how stigma is. I have been so stigmatized in Montgomery. Scott has been stigmatized. So many of us have been stigmatized. Because when you think outside the box and you want to do something different, ain't nobody gonna like you. That's why Yeshua HaMashiach was crucified. He was hated when he was crucified. Dr. King was hated when he was assassinated. He was the most hated man in America because he was fighting poverty. So until we get out of our comfortable and this looks good and it sounds good and it feels good, we're gonna keep on seeing folk dying from stigma. We're gonna keep on seeing a 30-year-old beautiful girl jump off a building, and we trying to figure out why she did that. Because we love to talk, but we ain't about that life for real.
One of the things I often say, we have to have these uncomfortable conversations. You know, they're very uncomfortable a lot of times, but you know, and again, going back, and I don't want to base everything, I don't want to be Piaget and Brentland, base everything on my own personal experience. But I'm very grateful that I was able, you know, to have a mom that I, you know, go and share some things with, you know, and talk about that and process that at home. But those are uncomfortable conversations that we have to have, and we have to be educated enough in order to be able to have that conversation. And not only that, but season our words with grace, in order to be able to do that. And so I'm grateful that we're having this conversation because of, you know, the stigma in the African American community of having to go see a therapist and having to go to somebody and even having to go to a physician because of what I've gone through. You know, it is important that we erase that stigma. Even the Alabama Department of Public Health and Alabama Department of Mental Health, they're working on that in order to erase that stigma, in order for us to be able to have this uncomfortable conversation in a safe place. You know, suicide prevention, a lot of those different things that we have to do, because again, that's just a byproduct of what is really going on with that particular person.
And I think it's important that many of the people that need to be a part of the conversation participate.
Exactly.
That's another thing many of them aren't doing. They're not getting to the spaces, and sometimes it feels like we're talking about them, but not with them.
Exactly.
You know, so I think that's very important. So, want to turn to the audience for questions right now? Are there any live questions right now? No? Okay. Audience questions? I just want to just bring voice to some of the people in the room. We have other questions that were submitted. So we want to bring voice to the people in the room. Are there any questions right now in the room?
To the panel, I mean, I came just so late, but the first time I heard about HIV, it was off the edge, and he got to do a blood transfusion. And people automatically stated that he probably was dead because of that, but he was not. It came out in the news. Then another question to Pastor there, we talk about trauma. And you said you had a situation where you were out of line for saying something, but I was wondering how did this start?
Well, it was a friend. We had gone out to eat. A friend had come to visit me from another city. And just so happened, I had no idea that they had gone through something personal. And so I made mention of something jokingly, okay, because it's just a friendly conversation. But I noticed how they shut down. And I'm very intuitive, you know, because that's just what we do, you know, and I'm always just filling the room to see exactly what direction I need to go in. And so but to make it better, what I did was I apologized for making that statement because it offended them. And as a result of it, it opened the door and it opened another way for him to say that how can I get therapy? How can I get some counseling? because that's what I need. And you know, and to come to think of it, and it's funny that you're bringing it up because I was thinking about it a little bit more today. And tonight, I said, you know, maybe that's the reason why they came back. You know, and maybe it was by divine appointment that did happen. You know, because sometimes, you know, and those of you who work, if you've ever worked in corrections, something got to happen in order for us to make a change to a route, you know, or any state agency or whatever. And so as a result of it, I think that's what happened. And so I was able to bring healing. I put a healing balm into that wound in order to be able to get them, encourage them to get the help they need.
Thank you.
I want to talk or make a statement concerning the Black church.
Yes.
The Black church is filled with Black people who that the oppressed become the oppressor. Because it's not just HIV that we don't want to talk about. We don't want to talk about incarceration. We don't want to talk about many of the things, the ills that we see for economics, as it says, for individuals, like families, and you'll put a whole lot of money in a big building, a big sanctuary. We never invest in educational facilities because that's not our mindset, because we're people of trauma, big trauma. And I don't care how much education we try to get, when we come back to our churches, we are the big dogs. So we've been put in this special place. We've been given these positions. The only place that granddaddy could be a deacon or pastor was on Sunday morning because he was boy the rest of the week. So he already got his own traumas, and you bring in traumas that are saying Black people are less than human. Less than human, because that's what they thought. They thought that we were oversexed, but they were sexing us. We were their slaves.
That's right.
So they said our women were not ladies. So what you see church women do, put on big old hats on Sunday morning and sit there real proper and tight in girdles. Trying to be ladies.
Yes,
Because we measure ourselves by European standards.
that's right.
When we're not, we've been so Europeanized, but that African and Afrocentricness is rooted in our soul. It's in our DNA. It's not anything that the European understanding of Yeshua HaMashiach or Jesus Christ, because J wasn't even founded, wasn't created until 1500. So that word Jesus. So when we go Yeshua HaMashiach, that was the understanding that many Africans had. They already knew Christianity before they got here. They couldn't understand a Christianity that oppressed them. Slaves, obey your masters, for it is right in the Lord. This European theological understanding was created and forced on them. But they met in bush halls, late at night, and worshiped and spoke in tongues and danced to their God. So when they came into some form of, slavery is bad. That black man sitting in the White House named Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves to cripple the South, not for them.
Teach.
Constantly, day in, day out, this type of trauma is happening to people who are trying to survive, who are trying to find their humanity. Just thanks be to God, we made it through civil rights and, made it through all those situations and movements. But we got silent because we became comfortable in our churches. We could drive in on our left side, more than one Lexus Cadillac. We don't want to depart from that. And anything that makes us uncomfortable, we don't want to deal with. So that's why God shut the churches down. Because we're not doing what we talk about. What he taught us. What we should do is to love thy neighbor as thyself. So I think a lot of what the Black church is going through is we're having to process some of this trauma now. We got to process, we got to deal with it, we got to give it a voice, because we have educated psychologists and psychiatrists sitting in our congregation, and they're going to have to walk us through some of this stuff.
Yes.
And we're going to have to be renewed.
I have a question in the back.
Okay.
I'm about tangible, practical results, having results. And one of the things that I've seen over the years, about 10 years ago, I was a part of a church in Maryland. And a young pastor, single pastor, for National Testing Day for HIV, he would stand in the pulpit, take a test, right there in the pulpit, doing regular service. And after that, you would see hundreds of people taking tests. What do you, as a panel, think as tangible, practical things the church can do to change stigma, to change mental, when you're dealing with HIV and mental illness? Tangible things that the church can do. Results and get results.
So what I want to say is I'm really grateful for MAO. When we started our partnership a few years ago, it started with us actually handing out condoms and care packages during the service. And not only during church on Sunday morning, but also in our food pantries and other areas that we were servicing the community. And I'll never forget getting a call saying that the new Methodist Black pastor on the west side is trying to get more people to have sex. And that's the call I got. And so I think what we have to do, and as we do a tangible response, we have to be prepared for someone to give us a call. And so one, I think you have to do is you have to get good partners. And so Ms. Karen and the education team, they've done an amazing job on connecting with an organization like ourselves and walking with us through the process and making sure that we have real resources accessible to individuals. And then we have to also, in a tangible space, we also have to educate other leaders. So we have to tell other leaders in the church that they may have a conversation that I'm not going to have, and let them know that someone can meet them in a park. And they'll meet you with a brown bag or whatever you need them to do. They'll meet you in a coffee shop and they'll provide the necessary resources. And here's the phone number. And so I think we just have to literally be willing to do the work and then make sure we make the necessary relationships to make sure the work goes forward.
I think too, if you looked at the flyer, and I'm sorry, I just jumped in, I won't be long. We're mindful this is the Deep South. And you have to still, and I have learned the hard way. And I love how Dr. Holmes said, I'm having to even learn how to deal with gracing my words. Because in the South, that is an amazing idea. And there are a lot of pastors that would be willing to do it, but the congregation might even push back. So what I would say, possibly start out with churches celebrating and honoring National AIDS and HIV Awareness Day, and do that, frame your sermon around it, and then after church, offer testing, have someone from MAO come out, because the reality of it is this panel was about stigma. There are still people that you could get up in Chicago or Maryland and do that, and everybody will run to get tested. But here, you will get phone calls,
Emails,
you won't have, but there is a way to get there. And I'm with you on that. So getting there, getting with the pastors' alliances and the different denominations and saying, hey, we have an epidemic going on, getting first the pastors to buy in, celebrating that day, and every year taking it a step higher and a step higher. I feel like that would be something tangible.
I just want to say one thing to this, that it does start with getting the pastors buy-in. And I had an opportunity to speak to 30 Black pastors. And the biggest question I got was, I don't think it's in my congregation. So, okay, so there is a problem there. There is a disconnect there. So we do have to start with that. It's a great idea, but yeah, that's problem.
First of all, I'm grateful, and I know about that pastor that does that. I've seen it quite a bit. I just honor them for doing that. I am one that thinks outside of the box, so I believe in practicality. Matter of fact, I don't have a PhD. I have a society, which is a practical doctorate. That's in where it's about practice. So I believe in practice. So what I'm saying is that for a pastor to do that, the same Bible that governs me as a leader governs the congregation also. The same principles that the congregation has to live by is the same principles that I have to live by. So what makes me any different? So what if I did test positive for HIV? Guess what? That's educational, because number one, HIV is no longer a death sentence.
That's right.
It's no longer that. Now, back when we went in school, it appeared to be that, okay? But because of study and because of that, it has now become treatable. And if proper medical attention is done, then it is undetectable.
Mhm.
However, here's the other piece of that. It's accountability as a leader. I think that that's a very noble thing to do. Because the thing is that if by chance I did test positive, I'm not going to tuck my tail and hide. What I'm going to do is I'm going to be that example and make sure that I do that. And one of the things that my pastor has always said, Pastor Terry Ellison, I remember we had a leadership conference, and I remember him saying in our conference, he said, we have to be so practical to this point. And he's, matter of fact, the vice president of church growth for the Church of God in Christ. He said that we have to be able to say, guess what? We tried this and it didn't work. So we need to try something else. So that model came from the West Angeles Cathedral Church of God in Christ, which is in Los Angeles, okay, where our former bishop, okay, Bishop Blake was over. They do the same thing, okay? They have the HIV, they have that uncomfortable conversation. Yes, in the sanctified church, okay, that we're supposed to be pure. But you feel me, okay? But the bottom line is, I say, the reality of the fact is that there are people that are not doing it. So we have to have that uncomfortable conversation. So and what I'm saying is that I honor that pastor for doing that, because that's the level of accountability that permeates throughout the congregation. So I believe in it. Yes.
And I just want to get one more practical. I used to serve a congregation that was very conservative. And even when it was mentioned in my sermon, they wrote a letter to the bishop's office. And so my response to that was, we took ribbons. We took red ribbons, and the ushers handed them out in every single bulletin as they came in. And then when we had the moment of altar call, I said, if you know someone that has been affected by HIV, will you come and place your ribbon on the altar? Every single person moved. And the ones that couldn't move, had someone to go, well, go carry this up there for me. And so we started there. I served that congregation for several years, and we didn't have testing there. But what we did do is we took a step and we started the work. And so regardless of those online, that we just have to take the step and then some type of way.
Thank you. So, okay, got 5 minutes, got questions in the back. You good? Okay. All right. Margaret?
Someone said, prepare for the call. Maybe this is a great closing segue going out, because I would like to challenge everyone on this panel to be prepared for the call. Education, particularly in Black culture, we'll get a degree. Black educated man is the most popular thing in this country. That's been pushed down our throat. However, with that, education comes, and Shakita and I, we have these conversations. She's psychologist. I said, let me talk real time to you, real time for you. We're talking about individuals going out. You should have the same face in each profession.
Yes.
If I'm coming to you and telling you, yes, I'm using a condom, because when I leave, we've created a relationship of trust between each other. I'm using a condom. You understand I'm using a condom. But you should also have the same face. It's when I come in and tell you, I like the feel of skin to skin. And I need you to create my medical plan, my professional plan, my mental health plan, my spiritual plan, my social plan. I need you to have that same face and preparedness for the call. If I say that to you, you cannot go and change face later because I have a degree, because I'm a doctor. Oh, we got to keep these metrics in place. No, like I tell Shakita, reason he did it, he needed pleasure. That's how simple this is. To understand the need for pleasure. Not sex, there's a difference. That's a whole other panel. But the understanding. So I challenge everyone on this panel to do just that. Be prepared for the call. If you don't feel you're prepared for the call Dr.
That's right.
Call Michelle, call Pastor, call Doctor. If you don't do that, there's no way your followers, your flock, there's no way it's gonna work. Michelle hit it right on the head. It's so simple. It's self-transparency. I shouldn't be ashamed to talk about what I do sexually to anybody.
That's right.
But you make me feel shame because your eyebrow go up, because I told you I was in the weekend and I, in Atlanta for the weekend, had a great party, had 10 guys over to the hotel. Your eyebrow goes up. Why? Why?
Telling the truth.
I'm glad you brought that up because one of the things, and I'm gonna say this real quick, because we're short of time. Being educated, okay, you know who educated me? MAO. And I'm gonna tell you why. Because when I would invite them to come over to chemical addictions program, okay, there you go. Okay, I became the student, not just the therapist for the group. Okay, I'm taking notes because I'm dealing with addicts. Because when they come to me, they talk about pleasure. Because in fact, that's why they use drugs. Because I need pleasure. Okay, all right. So I'm taking notes. I said, okay, well, so what does this condom do? Okay, what does this do? Yeah, the Pentecostal holiness preacher asked me about this. Okay, the bishop, but I need to know that because sex is not nasty. Okay, and so that's right, it's emotional, and it is something that we all have. We all have that feeling. So the bottom line is that what can we do, okay, in order to create this experience for you, okay, to keep you from having to be out there with 10 and 12 and 20. You understand what I mean?
I
Okay,
do,
right.
but I'm going to now challenge you back. What's wrong with you being out there with teachers?
I'm not,
You understand my concept?
right.
Because that's the first thing they would go to. If something is wrong clinically.
Exactly. Okay. And then what I would do clinically, I would ask, well, what is the need to have that many? And that's where the conversation starts instead of being judgmental. Have a level of understanding of that.
Totally agree.
Yeah, thank you for that question. And Mark, I don't know how you feel about, how I feel about you just telling everybody I ask a lot of questions. But I did, but that's how we're going to information.
That's the journey.
He knows when I call, it's going to be about 3 hours, because I'm just trying to process it, but that's how we understand each other.
Yeah.
That's how, okay. Last question is me.
Don't go to Montgomery Library. What's out there in the and this is all so informative and not dealt with anyone with the sex April, but when you deal with children and black women, women girls, we are not getting the same protection, the same treatment. Had a case that I for, but I will not. The child has herpes. And the mother was raped. The brother was molested. Then he did to his sister. It's been done. To say that. And I want Chloe because I want this little girl to have treatment because she's gonna grow to be someone who's gonna be looking for sex to fulfill her because it's taken away. Yes, I cannot go there. And I'm saying it because we don't get as black women because they can just walk around like this. Take on the world on our shoulders. We're not, we need help too. And we need protections from education when things happen like that. And our children go to school because this is happening in the home. You all hit on it when we talk about someone like the crime. If you knew what went on in the home, you would understand. You would understand, and it's worse down there. I have an issue with throwing me out because when I worked in Montgomery, we are going to be processed. It's just going on the world. And I don't understand it because I'm from up there. So I said that, please, and as black women, we need somewhere to go. We got to talk about it because so many of us have been in touch and we just don't, we act like it never happened. So we act out in it. Yes. Our girls act out in it. Yes. It's, young ladies are just different. Yeah. They are very different. And I'm just worried about the amount of transmitted disease. And this lady, nobody said anything about treating her mentally for something she never did.
Never. And mama looking at me because I'm on mama, but now you don't. I won't be able to get life until I see what she's going to therapy on a regular basis, and then I'm out.
Thank you. Yeah.
If I had a suggestion, Shakira, and I know you are really busy, I love the fact that you ask questions. At this point, would it be feasible, since the brother asked about, tangible things, Marco, I love what you said, and then that reality, social media is more than just our friends. It's transcended that. If we could all make a point to do something on our social media platforms to bring awareness or to make people comfortable. I already know tonight I'm gonna get on TikTok and try to use our platforms for more than just self-aggrandizement. Everybody can become an activist in their own way. Mental health, you all are powerful. Doc with the medicine. I would just deal with what Marco was talking about. Stop making sex so evil, and let's begin to have places and spaces where you're comfortable talking about it. Because with my 14-year-old daughter, I am very open, but when she goes to school and she gets that, she comes home, I'm like, baby, we're not gonna be shy about this. I have no illusions about what you're going to face, little girls with herpes. So can we all commit, if we really in this fight, to using our social media platforms? You ain't got to do it every day, but every now and then, if it's nothing but sending encouraging words to somebody with HIV and AIDS battling, someone feeling alone, suffering from depression or just, all these intellectuals, do a 3-minute breakdown on your TikTok. And if we start using social media, which is our greatest weapon, it's either going to be our greatest weapon or it's going to destroy us. And if we could do that, and I'm so grateful to be up here and be able to share. But I was going to ask you, because you are in therapy and you understand more so the mind of people, is there something that we could make a challenge to our community to do?
I think we absolutely can, but I also believe that organizations need to do it as well. My organization, Playwright, is committed to doing that. Marco runs the social media, he owns it, okay? So if we can do it individually and collectively, that would be even more powerful. So that's our charge that we're gonna leave with tonight. Our charge is gonna be connecting and continuing this conversation. Got it?
Yes.
All right. Thank you all so much for coming out. And we're concluding.